Get out and take that mistake with you, the billionaire CEO shouted, but 2 years later, he'd give anything for a second chance with his child. Get out and take that mistake with you. 5 simple words. But when billionaire CEO Gabriel Morrison said them to his pregnant girlfriend, he had no idea he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. That mistake. Rosalind stared at him, her voice barely a whisper. You're calling our baby a mistake? I never asked you to love me. And I definitely never asked for this. What happened next changed everything. She walked out. And Gabriel thought he was free. Free to build his empire without any distractions. Free to become one of the most powerful men in New York. But here's what he didn't know. What would absolutely destroy him years later. Rosalind wasn't just carrying one baby. She was carrying triplets. 3 little girls who would grow up looking exactly like him, while he lived in his glass tower, completely unaware they even existed. Now imagine this. You're a successful man. You think you have everything. Money, power, respect. Then one day, you accidentally run into the woman you abandoned. And standing next to her are 3 4-year-old girls with your exact same eyes. That's exactly what happened to Gabriel Morrison. And what he did next will shock you. Have you ever said something you immediately regretted? Something so cruel it haunted you for years? Well, Gabriel's about to learn that sometimes the universe gives you a second chance. But only if you're willing to give up everything you thought mattered. If you want to know whether love can survive betrayal, whether a father can earn his children's forgiveness, and whether some mistakes can actually be fixed, then you need to stay with me. Hit that like button and let me tell you a story about redemption that will change how you see second chances forever. Because what Gabriel does next proves that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. The first snowfall of the season painted Manhattan in pristine white, but inside the glass towers of Morrison and Associates, the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. Gabriel Morrison stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, his reflection sharp against the winter landscape beyond. At 34, he had built an empire on precision and perfection. Every line calculated, every design flawless, every emotion carefully controlled. But today, something felt different. There was an uneasiness in his chest that he couldn't shake. Like the calm before a storm that would change everything. The knock on his door came soft but insistent. He didn't turn around when his assistant entered. Mr. Morrison, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. Gabriel's jaw tightened. He had been expecting this moment for weeks, dreading it with an intensity that surprised him. Send her in. When Rosalind Vale walked through the door, the years seemed to collapse between them. Her auburn hair was shorter now, swept into an elegant twist that revealed the graceful curve of her neck. She wore a navy coat that spoke of success, but her green eyes held the same fierce intelligence that had once captivated him completely. Hello, Gabriel. Her voice was steady, professional, but he caught the slight tremor beneath the surface. He turned slowly, his expression carefully neutral. Rosalind. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please, sit. She remained standing, her chin lifted with a pride he remembered too well. I won't take much of your time. I'm here about the Meridian project. Gabriel's stomach dropped. Meridian. The waterfront development that would define his career, the project every major firm in the city had fought to win. What about it? Congratulations. You got the commission. Her smile was sharp as winter glass. I got the landscape design. The silence stretched between them, heavy with history and unspoken pain. Gabriel sank into his chair, running a hand through his dark hair. Of all the landscape architects in New York, of course it would be her. The universe had always had a cruel sense of irony. Rosalind, I don't. Her voice cut through the air like a blade. We're professionals now. Nothing more. I'll send my preliminary concepts by Friday. We'll communicate through our assistants. She turned to leave, but something made her pause at the door. Oh, and Gabriel? Bring your best work. I won't let you fail just because of our history, but I won't carry you either. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Gabriel alone with memories he'd spent 5 years trying to forget. 5 years. 5 years since the night that changed everything. 5 years since he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. And now she was back, successful and untouchable, while he sat in his glass tower wondering what might have been. You see, Gabriel Morrison had everything a man could want. A company worth hundreds of millions. Penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. Cars that cost more than most people's houses. But success has a way of feeling hollow when you're eating dinner alone every night. The rain had been falling for hours that October night 5 years ago. Gabriel had been working late again, lost in blueprints and deadlines, when Rosalind appeared in his doorway like a vision from a dream. You missed dinner, she said softly, holding up a bag from their favorite Italian place. He looked up, momentarily disoriented. They'd been seeing each other for 8 months. A whirlwind romance that had caught them both off guard. She was a graduate student then, brilliant and passionate about sustainable design, her eyes lighting up when she talked about healing the earth through thoughtful planning. I'm sorry, he said, pushing back from his desk. This proposal is due tomorrow, N. Gabriel. She set the food aside and moved toward him, her hand coming to rest on his shoulder. We need to talk. Something in her tone made his chest tighten. He'd been dreading this conversation for weeks, sensing her pulling away, their future together becoming uncertain as graduation approached. She took a shaky breath. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them, changing everything in an instant. Gabriel felt the ground shift beneath his feet, his carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. How long have you known? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 2 weeks. I kept waiting for the right moment, but... 2 weeks. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You've known for 2 weeks and you're just telling me now. Rosalind flinched as if he'd struck her. I needed time to process it myself. This changes everything, Gabriel. My career, my plans. Your plans. He turned on her, fear making his voice harsh. What about my plans? I'm on the verge of the biggest deal of my career. Morrison and Associates is finally going to be taken seriously, and now you want me to throw it all away for... For what? She challenged, her eyes flashing. For your child. For the woman who loves you. And that's when Gabriel said the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Words that came from fear, from selfishness, from a heart that was too small to hold anything bigger than his own ambition. I never asked you to love me. And I sure as hell never asked for this. The silence that followed was deafening. Rosalind's face went pale, then flushed with hurt and anger. You bastard, she whispered. You absolute bastard. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door. Gabriel's pride kept him frozen in place, even as every instinct screamed at him to go after her, to take back those cruel words. Rosalind, wait. She paused at the threshold, not looking back. Don't. You've made your choice. Live with it. The door slammed shut, and Gabriel was left alone with the echo of his own cruelty. He told himself he'd done the right thing. That love was a distraction. That a baby would ruin everything he'd worked for. He told himself that cutting her out was necessary, that he'd forget about her in time. He was wrong about everything. The months that followed were a blur of work and empty success. Gabriel threw himself into his projects with an intensity that impressed his colleagues and worried his friends. He landed the Morrison account that made his company millions. He was featured on magazine covers, invited to galas where people called him brilliant and visionary. But every night, When the noise of the world faded and he was left with silence, the regret began to seep through the cracks of his composure. He would lie in his king-size bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what had happened to her. Was she okay? Had she kept the baby? Was it a boy or a girl? Did the child have his eyes, her smile? The questions tormented him, but his pride kept him from seeking answers. Meanwhile, across the city, Rosalind was fighting the battle of her life. When she left Gabriel's office that night, she had $47 in her checking account and a baby on the way. What she didn't know yet was that the ultrasound 3 weeks later would change everything again. "Congratulations," Dr. Martinez said, her face beaming. "You're having triplets." Rosalind stared at the screen, watching 3 tiny heartbeats flickering like stars. 3 babies. 3 lives depending on her. 3 children who would never know their father. She cried that night. Cried for the fear, for the uncertainty, for the man who had chosen his career over their family. But when she woke up the next morning, something had changed inside her. She was done being a victim. She was going to be a mother, and she was going to be the best mother these babies had ever seen. The pregnancy was difficult. Working 3 part-time jobs while carrying triplets nearly broke her, but Rosalind refused to quit. She finished her graduate degree 8 months pregnant, walking across that stage with her head held high while her babies kicked inside her. Gabriel never knew any of this. While he was celebrating his company's success at expensive restaurants, Rosalind was eating ramen noodles and crackers, saving every penny for the baby's coming. On a cold February morning, Clara, Emma, and Lily Morrison came into the world. 3 perfect little girls with blonde hair and the most beautiful blue eyes Rosalind had ever seen. Eyes that looked exactly like their father's. That first year was the hardest of her life. No sleep, no help, no one to share the burden or the joy. When Clara got sick, Rosalind sat in the emergency room at 3 in the morning with all 3 babies, crying as much as they were. But she made it work. She had to. These 3 little girls were her world, and she would move mountains to give them everything they needed. By the time the girls turned 2, Rosalind had built a small but successful landscape design business. Her specialty became sustainable urban planning, turning concrete jungles into green spaces that could help heal the earth. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was literally in the business of taking broken things and making them beautiful again. Gabriel, meanwhile, was discovering that success without love felt like eating sand. Every achievement felt hollow. Every celebration was lonely. He had everything he thought he wanted, and it meant absolutely nothing. He tried dating, but every woman reminded him of what he'd lost. He tried traveling, but the emptiness followed him to every destination. He tried working more, but there weren't enough hours in the day to fill the hole in his chest. 3 years after that night, Gabriel found himself driving past the university where Rosalind had been a student. He sat in his car for hours, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but she was long gone. He hired a private investigator. The man came back empty-handed. "It's like she disappeared," he said. "No forwarding address, no social media presence, no trace." Gabriel nodded and paid the man, but inside he was dying. She was gone, and it was his fault. The baby, his baby, was growing up somewhere without him, and he had no one to blame but himself. The present day brought Gabriel back to reality with a crash. Rosalind walking into his office, successful and beautiful and completely indifferent to him, was like a knife to the heart. For 3 months, they worked on the Meridian project through their assistants. Her landscape designs were breathtaking. Sustainable installations that would make the waterfront development a model for environmental responsibility. She had become everything he'd always known she could be. But she was a stranger to him now. The woman who had once shared her dreams and fears over late-night coffee was gone, replaced by someone polished and untouchable. Gabriel was reviewing her latest submission when his assistant buzzed him. "Mr. Morrison. There's a situation at the site." They need you there immediately. He arrived to find chaos. A water main had burst, flooding the eastern section where Rosalind's signature garden was being installed. Crews scrambled to contain the damage while she stood in the middle of it all, her professional composure finally cracking. 6 months of work, she said when she saw him approach, her voice hollow. 6 months, and it's all ruined. Gabriel surveyed the damage, his mind already calculating solutions. We can salvage this. Move the installation to higher ground, adjust the drainage system. With what time? She snapped. We're supposed to break ground on the next phase in 2 weeks. Then we'll find more time. He turned to face her fully. Rosalind, I know you don't want to hear this, but you're not in this alone. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or the ghost of old trust. Why do you care? This isn't your problem. It became my problem the moment we started working together. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. And maybe I owe you something better than what I gave you before. For a moment, they just stared at each other. 5 years of hurt and regret hanging in the air between them. Then Rosalind shook her head. You don't owe me anything, Gabriel. You made that very clear. But she didn't walk away. And when the crew chief approached with questions about the cleanup, she found herself working alongside Gabriel to solve the crisis. That evening, they worked side by side for the first time in 5 years, redesigning the flood-damaged sections by the light of construction lamps. The old rhythm returned gradually. The way she anticipated his thoughts, how he understood her vision without explanation. You're different, she said during a break, accepting the coffee he'd brought from the trailer. Am I? She studied his face in the lamplight. Softer, maybe. Less afraid of letting people see who you really are. Gabriel's throat tightened. It took me a long time to figure out who that was. And who is that exactly? He was quiet for a long moment, watching her hands wrap around the warm cup. A man who made the worst mistake of his life and has been paying for it ever since. Rosalind looked away. Gabriel, don't. I think about that night every day, he said quietly. What I said to you. How I hurt you. How I let my fear make me cruel. Stop. Her voice was barely a whisper. Just stop. I can't. I can't stop thinking about the baby. Our baby. Wondering if it's a boy or a girl, what they look like, whether they have your eyes or mine. They. Gabriel froze. What? Rosalind's face had gone white. She set down her coffee with trembling hands. I said they. Rosalind, what are you? That's when they heard the sound. A small voice calling out across the construction site. Mommy. Mommy, where are you? Gabriel turned toward the sound and felt his world stop completely. A little girl was running toward them, maybe 4 years old, with blonde hair streaming behind her and the most beautiful blue eyes he'd ever seen. Eyes that looked exactly like his own. But she wasn't alone. 2 more little girls appeared behind her, identical in every way except for the colors of their jackets. 3 perfect little girls with his face and her smile, calling for their mother. Gabriel couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but stare at the 3 children he'd never known existed. Mommy. The first girl reached Rosalind and wrapped her arms around her legs. Mrs. Patterson said we could come find you because it's past dinner time and we're hungry. The other 2 girls arrived seconds later, chattering excitedly about their day and the big machines at the construction site. Gabriel stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. These weren't just any children. They were his children. His daughters. The babies he'd called a mistake were standing right in front of him, alive and beautiful and perfect. One of the girls noticed him staring and looked up with curious eyes. Mommy, who's that man? Rosalind's face was pale as paper. Her hands shook as she smoothed down their hair. This this is Mr. Morrison. He's the man Mommy works with." The little girl considered this gravely, then smiled. "Hi, Mr. Morrison. I'm Clara. That's Emma and that's Lily. We're triplets, but Mommy says we're special because we're individuals too." Gabriel's knees almost gave out. He knelt down slowly, bringing himself to their eye level. "Hi, Clara. Hi, Emma. Hi, Lily." His voice cracked on their names. His daughters. His 3 beautiful daughters who didn't know he was their father. "Your building is really tall," Emma said shyly. "We like tall buildings," Lily added. "We build them with blocks at home." "Do you like to build things too?" Clara asked. Gabriel looked at their faces, so open and trusting, and felt something break inside his chest. "Yes," he whispered. "I love building things." "Maybe you could come see our block city sometime," Clara said. "It's really good." That's when Mrs. Patterson arrived, a gray-haired woman who was clearly their babysitter. "I'm so sorry, Rosalind. They slipped out while I was making dinner. You know how they are when they set their minds to something." "It's okay, Mrs. Patterson." Rosalind's voice was strained. "We were just finishing up here anyway." She gathered the girls around her, preparing to leave. But Clara tugged on her mother's hand. "Mommy, can Mr. Morrison come to dinner? He looks sad." Out of the mouths of babes. Rosalind's eyes met Gabriel's across the distance, and he saw everything in that look. The fear, the pain, the years of raising their children alone. But also something else. Something that looked almost like longing. "Not tonight, sweetheart," she said softly. "Mr. Morrison is very busy." As they walked away, Gabriel stood in the middle of the construction site, watching his daughters disappear into the night. He could hear their voices getting fainter, their innocent chatter about dinner and bedtime stories and all the normal, beautiful things that made up their lives. Lives he'd missed completely. Lives he'd thrown away with 5 cruel words. And in that moment, Gabriel Morrison, billionaire CEO and master of his own destiny, realized that he'd been living as a dead man for 5 years. Everything he thought mattered, everything he'd built his life around, was nothing compared to what he'd just seen. His daughters. His 3 beautiful daughters who called another man's last name and had no idea their real father was standing 50 feet away, crying in the dark. What do you do when you realize you've thrown away the most important thing in your life? When you discover that the mistake you rejected was actually 3 perfect human beings who share your DNA and your stubborn chin and your love of building things. What do you do when you finally understand that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with? Gabriel was about to find out. Because seeing those 3 little girls changed everything. And what he does next will show you just how far a man will go to fix the biggest mistake of his life. But can some mistakes ever really be forgiven? Can a father earn the right to love children he abandoned before they were born? And most importantly, can a woman who built a life from the ashes of heartbreak ever trust the man who broke her heart in the first place? If you're wondering whether Gabriel gets his second chance, whether those 3 little girls ever learn the truth about their father, and whether love really can conquer the cruelest betrayal, then you need to stay with me. Because this story is just getting started, and what happens next will restore your faith in the power of redemption. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in second chances, and let me know in the comments what you think Gabriel should do next. Because sometimes the most broken stories have the most beautiful endings. That night, Gabriel didn't go home. He couldn't. Instead, he drove around the city for hours, his mind replaying every second of meeting his daughters. Their faces, their voices, the way Clara had asked if he could come to dinner because he looked sad. A 4-year-old had seen right through him. A 4-year-old had offered him kindness when he deserved nothing but contempt. He finally pulled over in a parking lot overlooking the river and called the one person who might understand. His older brother Michael, the one person who'd never been afraid to tell him the truth. "Gabriel? It's midnight. What's wrong? I messed up, Mike. I messed up so bad I don't know how to fix it. What happened? Gabriel told him everything. About Rosalind, about the pregnancy, about the cruel words he'd spoken 5 years ago. And about tonight. About 3 little girls with his eyes and her smile. The silence on the other end stretched for a long time. Jesus, Gabriel. Triplets. 3 daughters, Mike. 3 beautiful little girls who don't know I exist. And you're just finding out now? She tried to tell me. 5 years ago, she came to my office to tell me she was pregnant, and I... Gabriel's voice broke. I called the baby a mistake. I told her I never asked her to love me. I was so focused on my career, so terrified of anything that might derail my success, that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Michael was quiet for another moment. What are you going to do? I don't know. She hates me, Mike. And she has every right to. I abandoned them before they were even born. But you didn't know about the other 2. It doesn't matter. Gabriel's voice cracked. I knew about one baby and I walked away. What kind of man does that? What kind of father chooses his career over his own child? A scared one, Michael said quietly. A stupid, scared one. But Gabriel, you're not that man anymore. How do you know? Because the Gabriel I knew 5 years ago wouldn't be crying in a parking lot at midnight because he hurt someone he loved. The Gabriel I knew 5 years ago would have found a way to justify it, to make it about business or logic or whatever. But you're not doing that. You're finally seeing what matters. Gabriel wiped his eyes. It might be too late. Maybe. But maybe not. You'll never know unless you try. The next morning, Gabriel stood outside Rosalind's office building, his hands shaking as he rehearsed what he was going to say. He'd been up all night, thinking about his daughters, about the years he'd missed, about the woman who'd raised them alone while he'd been living in his ivory tower. When Rosalind walked out of the elevator, she stopped dead when she saw him. Gabriel, what are you doing here? We need to talk. No, we don't. She tried to walk past him, but he stepped into her path. Please. Just 5 minutes. You had 5 years to talk. You chose not to. I know. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. But those little girls are none of your business. Her voice was ice cold. You made that very clear 5 years ago. They're my daughters, Rosalind. No. She spun around, her eyes blazing. They're my daughters. Mine. You're just the sperm donor who wanted nothing to do with them. The words hit him like physical blows, but he didn't back down. You're right. Everything you just said is right. I was a coward and a fool, and I threw away the most important thing in my life because I was too selfish to see what really mattered. And now you've seen them, and suddenly you care. I've cared every day for 5 years. The words exploded out of him. Every single day I wondered about the baby you were carrying. Whether it was okay, whether you were okay, whether I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. And I had. I made the worst mistake any man could make. Rosalind's composure cracked slightly. You have no idea what those years were like. Then tell me. Please. Help me understand what I put you through. She stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. You want to know? Fine. Let me paint you a picture. She stepped closer, her voice low and furious. I found out I was having triplets at 20 weeks. 3 babies, Gabriel. 3. Do you have any idea what that meant? The fear, the complications, the cost. Gabriel's stomach twisted, but he stayed silent. I worked 3 jobs while I was pregnant. Waitressing until my feet swelled so bad I couldn't stand. Tutoring kids because I needed the money for medical bills. Cleaning offices at night because the pay was better and I could work around my classes. Each word was like a knife. Rosalind. I'm not done. Tears started streaming down her face. I spent the last month of my pregnancy on bed rest. Alone. No one to bring me food, no one to drive me to appointments, no one to hold my hand when the doctors said there might be complications. Gabriel felt sick. While she'd been fighting for their children's lives, he'd been celebrating his latest business deal. They were born 10 weeks early. 10 weeks, Gabriel. They spent 2 months in the NICU, and I lived in that hospital, pumping milk every 3 hours and praying they would survive. Do you know what it's like to see your babies covered in tubes and wires, so small you're afraid to touch them? God, Rosalind, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't feed 3 babies when you've got $15 in your checking account. Sorry doesn't pay for formula when your milk supply drops because you're working 18 hours a day. Sorry doesn't rock a screaming baby at 3 a.m. when you haven't slept in 4 days and you don't know if you can make it through one more minute. Gabriel was crying now, the full weight of what she'd endured hitting him like a freight train. I should have been there. I should have helped you. I should have. But you weren't. She wiped her eyes angrily. And we survived without you. We more than survived. We thrived. So don't you dare show up here now thinking you can just walk back into our lives because you finally grew a conscience. I don't want to walk back into your lives, he said quietly. I want to earn my way back. If you'll let me. Earn your way back. She laughed bitterly. Gabriel, you can't earn back 5 years. You can't earn back the first steps you missed, the first words, the nightmares, the fevers, the birthdays, the Christmas mornings. You can't earn back being there when Clara broke her arm, or when Emma had pneumonia, or when Lily asked why she doesn't have a daddy like the other kids. Each missed moment was another stab to his heart. What did you tell them? About me? The truth. That their father wasn't ready to be a daddy. That sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. That it had nothing to do with them, because they're perfect and wonderful and deserving of all the love in the world. Gabriel's chest ached. Even in his absence, she'd protected them from his rejection. She'd found a way to explain his abandonment without making them feel unloved. They don't hate me. They don't know you. Her voice softened slightly. Hate requires knowing someone well enough to be disappointed by them. I want to know them. Please, Rosalind. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to be their father. I want to be the man they deserve. It's too late for that. Is it? Because last night, Clara invited me to dinner. A 4-year-old showed me more kindness than I've ever deserved. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe there's still a chance. A chance for what? To be a family. To give them what they should have had from the beginning. Rosalind stared at him for a long moment. You think you can just decide to be a father now? You think love works that way? I think love is the only thing that does work that way. I think it's never too late to choose love over fear. And what happens when things get hard? When the novelty wears off? When being a parent interferes with your precious career? What happens then, Gabriel? It was the question he'd been dreading. The one that cut right to the heart of who he'd been 5 years ago. I quit Meridian, he said quietly. Rosalind's eyes widened. What? I quit the project. I walked away from the biggest commission of my career. Why would you do that? Because it doesn't matter. None of it matters if I don't have them. If I don't have you. He stepped closer. I spent 5 years building an empire, and for what? To eat dinner alone every night? To wake up in an empty bed and pretend that success fills the hole in your chest? Gabriel. I love you. The words came out raw and desperate. I never stopped loving you. And seeing you last night, seeing our daughters, made me realize that I've been dead for 5 years. Just going through the motions of living while the only things that ever mattered were growing up without me." Rosalind was crying again, but softer now. "Love isn't enough. Maybe not. But it's a start. And I'm willing to spend the rest of my life proving that I've changed. That I'm not the selfish coward who broke your heart." "How? How do you prove something like that?" "By showing up. Every day. Whether you forgive me or not. Whether you take me back or not. I want to be part of their lives, Rosalind. Even if it's just Saturday afternoons at the park. Even if I'm never anything more to them than the man who builds things and tells bad jokes. I just want to know them." She was quiet for a long time, staring at his face as if trying to see into his soul. "They ask about their father sometimes," she said finally. "Wonder what he's like, why he's not here. I always tell them he must have a very good reason. But Gabriel, if you do this, if you become part of their lives, you can't leave again. Ever. Because losing a father they know would destroy them in ways losing a father they never knew couldn't. I'm not leaving. Not ever again. You say that now. I mean it." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. "This is my resignation letter from Meridian. The project I've spent 2 years working on, the deal that would have made me richer than I ever dreamed. I'm walking away from all of it." She took the paper with trembling hands, scanning the formal language that dissolved his biggest professional achievement. "Gabriel, you can't give up your career for." "I'm not giving it up. I'm choosing something better. I'm choosing them. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing love over money for the first time in my pathetic life." Rosalind looked up at him, and for just a moment, he saw a flicker of the woman who'd loved him 5 years ago. The woman who'd brought him dinner when he worked too late, who'd believed in him when he barely believed in himself. "I don't know how to trust you again," she whispered. "Then don't. Not yet." He took a small step closer. "Just let me try to earn it. Let me prove that I'm not the man who walked away. Let me show you and the girls that family comes first, always. What are you asking for exactly? A chance to know my daughters. To be their father, if they'll have me. To take care of you the way I should have 5 years ago. And us? You and me." Gabriel's heart pounded. "I'm asking for whatever you're willing to give me. If friendship is all you can manage, then I'll take it. If co-parenting is the best we can do, then that's enough. But if there's any part of your heart that still remembers what we had, any chance that you could love me again someday." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The hope was too fragile, too precious to voice completely. Rosalind closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were full of tears. "They have your eyes, you know. All 3 of them. Sometimes I look at them and see you so clearly it takes my breath away. Do they know that I'm their father?" "No. I wasn't ready for that conversation. I didn't think I'd ever have to be. When you are ready, when you think they can handle it, I'd like to tell them. Together." She nodded slowly. "Maybe. Maybe we can work toward that." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a second chance at love. But it was hope. For the first time in 5 years, Gabriel felt like he could breathe again. "There would be rules," Rosalind said. "Boundaries. This isn't about us getting back together. This is about you being a father. Whatever you need. You don't get to discipline them. You don't get to make decisions about their lives. You earn that right over time, if you earn it at all. I understand. And if you hurt them, if you disappoint them, if you walk away again, I will make sure you never see them again. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." She studied his face one more time, then sighed. "They're having a birthday party next week. They'll be 5. If you want to come, you can. As a friend. Nothing more. Gabriel's throat tightened. I'd love that. Bring presents, but nothing expensive. They don't need to know you have money. And Gabriel? She fixed him with a serious look. Don't break their hearts. They've been through enough. As she walked away, Gabriel stood on the sidewalk feeling like he'd been given a gift he didn't deserve. A birthday party. A chance to celebrate the daughters he'd never known existed. It wasn't much. But it was a start. The next week crawled by like the slowest 7 days of Gabriel's life. He must have gone to 10 different toy stores, trying to find the perfect gifts for 3 little girls he barely knew. Nothing too expensive, Rosalind had said. Nothing that would reveal he was wealthy beyond their imagination. He finally settled on art supplies. 3 identical sets with crayons, markers, colored pencils, and sketchbooks. If they were anything like their mother, they'd love creating beautiful things. The party was at a small community center near Rosalind's apartment. Gabriel arrived early, his palms sweating as he carried the wrapped gifts inside. The room was decorated with streamers and balloons, and there was a homemade banner that read, "Happy 5th birthday Clara, Emma, and Lily." Other parents were starting to arrive with their children, and Gabriel suddenly felt completely out of place. He was used to boardrooms and business deals, not birthday parties with juice boxes and cake. Mr. Morrison. Gabriel turned to see Clara running toward him, her face lit up with excitement. She was wearing a pink party dress and had a small tiara perched on her blonde curls. You came. You really came. Of course I came, Gabriel said, kneeling down to her level. I wouldn't miss your birthday. Emma and Lily appeared a moment later, equally excited to see him. They were wearing matching dresses in blue and purple, and Gabriel's heart squeezed at how beautiful they looked. Did you bring presents? Lily asked with 5-year-old directness. Lily. Rosalind appeared beside them, looking embarrassed. That's not polite to ask. It's okay, Gabriel laughed. And yes, I did bring presents. The girls cheered and started jumping up and down. Can we open them now? Please, please, please. After cake, Rosalind said firmly. Go play with your friends. The party's about to start. As the girls ran off to join the other children, Gabriel found himself alone with Rosalind for the first time since their conversation outside her office. Thank you, he said quietly. For letting me come. Don't thank me yet. The day's not over. Gabriel spent the next 2 hours in a state of wonder. He watched his daughters play games with their friends, sing along to silly songs, and laugh until their faces turned red. They were confident, happy children, and it was clear that Rosalind had done an amazing job raising them. During the cake ceremony, as everyone sang happy birthday, Gabriel felt tears prick his eyes. 5 years old. His daughters were 5 years old, and this was the first birthday he'd ever celebrated with them. When it was time for presents, the girls tore through their gifts with the enthusiasm only children could muster. Gabriel's art supplies were a huge hit. Look, Mommy. Emma held up the colored pencils. There are so many colors. We can draw everything, Clara added. Even rainbows. What do you say to Mr. Morrison? Rosalind prompted. All 3 girls turned to Gabriel with beaming smiles. Thank you. Then, without warning, they rushed him, wrapping their small arms around his legs in a group hug. Gabriel nearly broke down right there in the middle of the party. These were his children. His daughters. And for the first time in their lives, they were hugging him. Later, as the party wound down and other families started to leave, Gabriel helped clean up. He was stacking chairs when he noticed Lily sitting alone in the corner, looking sad. Hey there, he said, approaching carefully. Everything okay? Lily looked up at him with those blue eyes that were so much like his own. Mr. Morrison, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Do you have kids? Gabriel's heart stopped. Why do you ask? Because you're really good at playing with us. And you know how to make balloon animals. And you helped Tommy when he skinned his knee without being weird about it. Gabriel sat down beside her, trying to figure out how to answer. What would you think if I said I wished I had kids just like you and your sisters? Lily considered this seriously. I think that would make you really lucky. Because we're pretty awesome. Gabriel laughed, even as his eyes filled with tears. You are definitely awesome. Maybe you could be our pretend dad, Lily said matter-of-factly. Just for pretend. Clara and Emma and me have been wishing we had a dad to do dad things with. What kind of dad things? Like teaching us to ride bikes without training wheels. And fixing things when they break. And carrying us on your shoulders so we can see far away. She paused. And maybe reading us bedtime stories sometimes. Gabriel had to swallow hard before he could speak. I would love to be your pretend dad, if your mommy says it's okay. Really? Really? Lily threw her arms around his neck, and Gabriel held his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and feeling like his heart might explode from love and grief all at once. When Rosalind came looking for them, she found them still hugging. Something shifted in her expression when she saw how naturally they fit together. Time to go home, girls, she said softly. As they gathered their things, Clara tugged on Gabriel's sleeve. Mr. Morrison, will you come to our house sometime? We want to show you our block city. Gabriel looked at Rosalind questioningly. After a long moment, she nodded. Maybe next weekend, she said. If Mr. Morrison isn't too busy. I'm never too busy for you three, Gabriel said, and meant every word. As they said their goodbyes, Lily whispered in his ear, I asked Mommy if you could be our pretend dad, and she said maybe. So cross your fingers. That night, Gabriel sat in his empty penthouse, thinking about the day. About 3 little girls who'd welcomed him into their world with the kind of pure, unconditional love he'd never thought he deserved. About Lily asking if he had kids, and how badly he'd wanted to tell her the truth. About Emma sharing her cake with him because sharing makes everything taste better. About Clara holding his hand during the group games because friends stick together. These were his children. His daughters. And they were perfect and wonderful and everything he'd thrown away because he'd been too stupid and scared to see what really mattered. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to make things right. Maybe love really was strong enough to survive the cruelest betrayals. Maybe families could be built on second chances and forgiveness and the courage to choose love over fear. And maybe, if he worked hard enough, if he proved himself worthy, Gabriel Morrison might actually get to be the father his daughters deserved. The father he should have been from the very beginning. Because sometimes, the most broken stories really do have the most beautiful endings. Sometimes, the biggest mistakes can become the greatest gifts. And sometimes, love finds a way to heal even the deepest wounds. This is what Gabriel was about to discover. That being a father isn't about biology or timing or perfect circumstances. It's about showing up. It's about choosing to love completely, without reservation, without condition. It's about putting 3 little girls and their amazing mother ahead of everything else in your life. And for the first time in 5 years, Gabriel Morrison was ready to do exactly that. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe in second chances and the power of forgiveness, then hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because we all deserve love. We all deserve the chance to make things right. And we all deserve to believe that it's never too late to choose family over everything else. Let me know in the comments what you think happens next. Because Gabriel's journey is just beginning, and these 3 little girls are about to teach him the most important lesson of his life. That love isn't something you earn. It's something you give. And when you give it freely, without expecting anything in return, it has the power to transform everything. Even a broken man who thought he'd lost his chance at happiness forever.